Hey everyone, today I wanted to go ahead and do a follow-up to a video I had posted just a few months ago about how to set up on a Rancher cluster a Postgres Helm chart that was using Bitnami infrastructure, and this follow-up is going to be switching from that Bitnami infrastructure over to a cloud-native infrastructure. So that will lead us down quite a bit of a lift. If you're somehow still using Bitnami, I'm sure you have had to deal with the same headache that I had to deal with, and that is that Bitnami has now gone to the dark side. They are looking for $70,000 a year if you want to use a tagged image, and you can see that I have this here where this Postgres image, it used to be where if you went to tags, you would see the different versions of Postgres that you could pull, and Bitnami just had all of those for free. That is no longer the case. If you want to use those tagged images, you have to pay an exorbitant amount of money. And I believe this was a move from them to really screw over all of the businesses that work with them, that relied on it for those businesses for their infrastructure, and have a way to like generate revenue from it. Like, I understand it, but I totally do not agree with it whatsoever, especially since it completely screws over all of the home labs that are out there. So with this, we're going to be moving over to a cloud native Helm chart. Now, I'm not sure if cloud native provides a good Helm chart out there, so I went ahead and just made one using the cloud native images that also includes a backup for us. So this is going to be using Postgres. Cloud native essentially does all of the. Hey everyone, today I wanted to go ahead and do a follow-up to a video I had posted just a few months ago about how to set up on a Rancher cluster a Postgres Helm chart that was using Bitnami infrastructure, and this follow-up is going to be switching from that Bitnami infrastructure over to a cloud-native infrastructure. So that will lead us down quite a bit of a lift. If you're somehow still using Bitnami, I'm sure you have had to deal with the same headache that I had to deal with, and that is that Bitnami has now gone to the dark side. They are looking for $70,000 a year if you want to use a tagged image, and you can see that I have this here where this Postgres image, it used to be where if you went to tags, you would see the different versions of Postgres that you could pull, and Bitnami just had all of those for free. That is no longer the case. If you want to use those tagged images, you have to pay an exorbitant amount of money. And I believe this was a move from them to really screw over all of the businesses that work with them, that relied on it for those businesses for their infrastructure, and have a way to like generate revenue from it. Like, I understand it, but I totally do not agree with it whatsoever, especially since it completely screws over all of the home labs that are out there. So with this, we're going to be moving over to a cloud native Helm chart. Now, I'm not sure if cloud native provides a good Helm chart out there, so I went ahead and just made one using the cloud native images that also includes a backup for us. So this is going to be using Postgres. Cloud native essentially does all of the different things that the Bitnami one would, except it's not as encompassing from what I understand. So like I said, I didn't see a specific Helm chart for it, but it's easy enough to write one, right? And that's what this is over here. But anyway, let me go back. The only other thing that we're going to set up this time is also a Minio bucket. So this is essentially an S3 bucket that we're going to have for us. The S3 bucket is very nice because it's perfect for backups, so your entire database will be able to be backed up into a different area. Now this does lead us down a path where we're going to essentially have to rip out all of the Bitnami infrastructure. So Bitnami is going to have to be totally ripped out, which can be kind of frustrating depending on how intertwined your Postgres was. For me, it was very frustrating because all of my different applications relied on this single cluster, and not that that was necessarily wrong. I still think that if that way of doing it is correct, I think just relying on Bitnami was the mistake. So yeah, that's where all of this will have to head down now. So yeah, we're going to be setting up the cloud native infrastructure. Like I said, I have a Helm chart that we'll be using for this. This Helm chart will be publicly accessible. The GitHub's going to be accessible. It's going to be on my GitLab as well. And you'll be able to just you'll be able to download the Helm chart directly. If you want, you could fork the GitHub and then have your own copy of it. I do not mind that. This is going to be MIT license, so essentially open source. Yeah, it's nothing too crazy. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of jump into what the Helm chart's doing for this next section. You can see here this Helm chart, right? So we have our chart.yaml, and this is kind of the overview of the chart. Nothing too crazy here. If we're gonna go into the templates, we're gonna start with the cluster. In the cluster YAML, you can see the API version, and this is showing the cloud native Postgres version, which is coming from something that we're gonna have to install into our Kubernetes cluster. That is the cloud native objects. And this specific cluster.yaml is the of kind cluster. The metadata is very simple, right? Whatever the values YAML for the namespace is, the name of it, super simple. The spec is saying there's 3 instances of it. Primary update strategy, it's unsupervised. In this case, it's not super important for what it is. And then the bootstrap, the initdb, this is important. We're gonna have to set a secret prior to running this, and that secret will essentially have the app user plus their password. So, and the owner being app user is important. Super user secret, we'll be able to set this as well. And then if we keep going, if you want backup enabled, which you should, we're going to essentially use this object store, which allows us to have an S3 bucket. This S3 bucket will point to the Minio server that we're also going to have to set up. S3 credentials, it's nothing crazy here. They're both pulling from this backup secret. And then how it's compressed, which this is being compressed into gzip. And then down here, we just have the different way the pods are being orchestrated in our cluster. If we go to scheduled backup, it's just a cron job that runs on the set schedule. You can change that to however you want. We have a backup owner reference that is self, and then yeah, scheduled backup, which again is another object that comes from the cloud native Postgres library. And then finally, we have our backup secret, which is super simple, just a secret that has the access key and the secret access key that comes from Minio. And then finally, yeah, and then we have our values YAML. And then this is where we're actually going to be going through and updating to set it tailored to whatever your cluster is. Now, obviously, if there's anything else you want to change or update, or you feel like this is lacking, this was just a quick pass to get something up and running. It can definitely be way more detailed and have way more power, but you can kind of see how to use the different cloud native objects. So now we're going to go over into Rancher. So in Rancher, we're going to go to apps, we're going to go to repositories, and we're going to add a new repository. We're going to hit create, and then we're going to add this cloud native one. This is going to be in the comment or in the description below. So you're going to give it a name, paste in the index URL, and then hit create. That's going to create our repository for our cloud native. And then you're going to add another one. If you want to use mine, you can, but this can be through GitHub. If I click on this and hit config, you can kind of see how this is. We're going to have our name for it, the GitHub repo URL, the branch that we're using, and then your GitHub login, which you might need a key for. Mine's just the actual one. I'm not sure if this is actually needed because this is public, but I'm not. Again, I did it. Could be wrong, could be right, not sure. Anyway, and then one more. You need to do the same thing for the Minio one. So you can see here, this is https charts.min.io. And then that's the 3 that you're going to need for this. Then we're going to go to charts, and we're first going to install the min.io chart. This guy has a little bit that we're going to need to actually set up. First, we're going to create a new namespace called min.io. You're gonna want to name it Minio as the app that's being installed. So here I did a few things. One was I updated the mode to standalone. So instead of having multiple different pods, I'm only using the one. That's because Minio is pretty massive. You can even see here its initial size wants to be 0.5 terabyte, 500 gigs. So having 3 images or 3 pods running all using 500 gigs is crazy. I actually lowered mine to 50. Again, you can always expand this in the future, so I figured putting this at 50 is fine. The only other thing then, we got to go to root user, root password. You're going to want to set this to whatever you want for your user, initial user that's going to be logging in. The persistence, we're going to want to update this. Again, this is all going to be in that GitHub repo for this video, so you'll be able to see kind of the detail of the values that I used and the values that I updated. I try to make this stuff a little bit easier for you guys, so we're going to go to the security context. I'm trying to find it. Not these ones. And we're going to actually not make it root. There's one thing you can add is run as non-root. Something that I added, that way I can get it off root. And then I added a new thing for pod security context. This way you don't have to, it gives a little bit more security on it. There's no benefit to running it as root, so this way we're just kind of avoiding it. We need to set up the service here. You see here I'm using cluster IP. This isn't going to be cluster IP. I changed this to a node port, which, because we have Metal LB installed, and if you need to look up the video, you can, but because we have Metal LB installed, this actually gets its own URL, and you can see that here, right? This is local on my machine, on one of those nodes, and it's exposed so to my local network. That way, like, we can access it from outside of the Kubernetes cluster. Then we want to update resources to wherever we want. I think taking 16 gigs is crazy, but again, this is probably meant for a production environment. We're not a production environment, we're a home lab. And then I had, for buckets, which is at the top of the list, I had a bunch of buckets for the default. These ones are all for GitLab, all of these guys. And then this guy is for my Postgres backups, right? That way, this GitLab instance can use the same Minio Helm chart instead of spinning up its own. And then with that, we should actually have this configured correctly. It shouldn't be anything more than that. Then you're going to hit this and you're going to install. I'm not going to do that because I don't actually need to. Then from there, once it's installed, you should be able to access it through the node port that you exposed. Yeah, if we go to services, we actually see it here. Weirdly enough, I couldn't find this in the other instance, but it shows up here. So if I click this, then it takes us to the specific pod or the specific node that's running it. And that's what this is right here. This is the node that's running it, and then this is the port for that guy. And that's because this is a node port. Again, it's fine to expose it on your local network, depending on your needs. In my instance, this is totally okay. With that, we should have a Minio. You should be able to log into Minio, and that initial login, if I sign out, that initial login will have the username password that you set in the values YAML. Once we're logged in, we're going to need to create an access key. You can see I have two here. The one for Postgres will have this bit of code. This policy will be, again, in the GitHub repo, so it'll be easier, but you're going to create a new access key that's going to give you an access key and then a secret key. You're going to need both of these for your Postgres backups. You're going to restrict the policy to make sure it's not just being able to use any of the other buckets in your Minio instance. Then you're going to give it a name, hit create. Once you create it, you'll have those codes. Then you can come over here, you're gonna go to secrets, you're gonna create a new secret with those codes. This is one of them right here. So this is a secret for GitLab. And then I also had one for my cluster, yeah, right here. So cluster database S3 creds. That, again, that one comes from the values YAML. You're actually just gonna put the secret key and access key in here, right? So that's what these two are, comes from right here. So you'll create that. The other thing you'll need to create is this guy, cluster database app user, but this will have a password and the username. I'm gonna blur this so you guys can see it, but this you'll need to create beforehand. The Helm chart does not do that. Once you have that and you update the values YAML, we're gonna go, well, I guess we're gonna go ahead and update the values YAML. So let's do that. So we're gonna hit charts. We're gonna look for it here. Boom, home, Postgres, high availability. Hit install. Put that in its own thing. Give it a name. Ideally, it should be the same name as what it is. And then you just set the backup. Change the secret key here, change the access key to the access key that you get from here, secret key from the same thing. Make sure the endpoint matches the one that you have in your cluster. Mine is actually like Minio. Insecure just means over HTTPS or HTTP, which HTTP is fine because it's all local in the cluster. And then the stuff down here, the super user Postgres, this can pretty much be the same. This would generate a secret that will be for the super user. The CloudNative does that for you. And then, yeah, and once it's running, we will get not a stateful set, but it's actually called a cluster. So we have to find it in here. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, down here. So Postgres CloudNative.io. And then, yeah, here's our cluster. Same secret keys and whatnot, stored away. And yeah, it's just stored here. And then here's our scheduled backup. I think I'll update the Helm chart to not store a gajillion of the jobs. There's no benefit to having more and more jobs. It can kind of waste resources in your Rancher cluster doing that. I think having like the last 10 run or even like 20 is enough. And again, I'll add that to the Helm chart. So that after you do that, after you upload those values YAMLs in the Postgres, you'll install that guy. He should just run. He shouldn't have any issues if you set up Minio correctly. And then you should have your own Rancher cluster or your own instance of Rancher. And then from here, we can go ahead and start using the same job that we had previously. Yeah, we'll have this same job. It's not this specific one, but this job I'll paste the same one in that repo. All going to be accessible there. It's also going to be on my blog, which should be up probably roughly around the same time as I get this video up. Be able to run this job and create the database. We'll have the same access to our Postgres as we did before. And yeah, this time with backups. So it's a little more secure, a little bit better. Eventually, I'm going to make a video on showing how to make Minio backups to this backup. So store all of these buckets into somewhere else, either another Minio instance or a different server. That way, like, it's not all just going to be reliant on this guy. If this guy ever goes down, I have a way of bringing everything back. And that's kind of the idea here, is backups with backups, right? Because yeah, if this is all my backups and he goes down, then what? Then I'm kind of out of luck, right? I have to figure everything else out. So that's kind of the idea here. Have a backup for him, and then it's way simpler. So yeah, with that, I think that pretty much covers everything for this. One thing I do want to cover is that there is a cluster chart that comes from CloudNative. You can use this. You can see it says it's advised against use in production. You could say the same thing about the one I spun up for this. This guy definitely has way more customizability built into him. I'm just going to use mine for the time being. It's roughly all the same stuff though. It's setting up a cluster using CloudNative and then setting up the backups for it. It definitely has some other stuff like this recovery here if you're wanting to load back in a backup, which could be really useful. But again, I think for the time being, I'm just gonna keep it simple using my own. You'll also need to install the CloudNative objects. Yeah, you'll have to install the operator manifest. I pulled it up here. It's in the installation guides for CloudNative. I did this prior to actually running this. You only have to do it once. Once this is installed, that actually gives you access to those different kind systems and whatnot. So it shouldn't be too much once you do this. Again, hopefully the guide will walk you through this. Again, also going to be in our description, so trying to make it easy for you. So, and with that should be everything for you to be able to set up the new and improved Postgres without using Bitnami. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing if you would like to see more content about this home cluster. Next video, next video will be a follow-up to GitLab and showing fixes for GitLab and switching it over to using our own Minio and also our own Redis that isn't Bitnami. And then once that is done, we're gonna actually jump a little bit more into setting up some more useful stuff on our home cluster. So please consider subscribing. Leave a like if you liked the video, and leave any comments or any problems or anything you had below. I make sure to read every comment.